I'm going to skip the introductions. I mean, you've heard who all these fine young gentlemen are, so we'll just leave it as that. You've got your pictures up on screen as well. So welcome to this conversation. I invite you at any point in time, if you have any questions, just put it on Slido, and I will try and get them addressed to the panel as well. But my name is Stephen Chia, and yeah, I'm a journalist, a journalist by day, father by night, which is a whole different story. But these days, we can get AI to do a lot of things for us. In fact, you want to guess whether I did or did not use it to come up with my questions today? Okay, you can figure it out as we go along. Because in the 1 year since ChatGPT was released, Gen AI has taken the world by storm. It's caught our attention because it's made AI so accessible. So what does this mean? How does it affect the financial services industry? For the next half hour or so, we're going to look at some real-world case studies. These gentlemen here are going to share some examples from their organizations to understand the challenges and also the opportunities for implementing Gen AI in financial institutions. Okay, Ali, I'm going to kick off with you because Microsoft is used by many companies all over the world, specifically in the finance industry as well. Can you tell us how is AI being implemented there? And give us some examples of how it's sort of changed the way Microsoft looks at things.
Stephen, well, thank you for having us, and thank you for this distinguished panel and all the audience here. So at Microsoft, I mean, if you look at the breadth and the size of our company, we look at how we build AI across three different dimensions. First, how we make AI available to all of our customers and partners. So that includes, of course, building the products and the services and the global infrastructure at a hyperscale across the entire global industry to be able to make it, very cost-effective, very accessible, and democratized to a level that is available on any connected device, and in some cases, on-prem. We also spend a lot of, energy on R&D to make it secure, ethical, and responsible. But in particular to finance industry, given this conference, I want to cover two aspects. The first is really areas around, how we modernize, a lot of the banks and the financial institutions we work with. And that includes everything from, customer service to automating processes, to really reinventing, the customer experience, to increasing productivity or content. But one area in particular I want to spend time on is an area around, financial crime. And, a lot of people, don't necessarily appreciate how complex, the financial crime arena is, and the fact that it is really not a harmless crime. One way or the other, financial crime finds its way back, home, whether, at the personal level in terms of credit card fraud, identity theft, or even funding criminal activity underground, from, human trafficking, wildlife trafficking, terrorism, and many other things. And it costs the global industry over 5% of the global GDP. On a $100 trillion global economy, financial crime is a $5 trillion problem. That is bigger than a lot of the developed economies around the world. And in Microsoft, when we look at that aspect, Microsoft itself is one of the largest companies in the world, and according to our statistics, is the most attacked company on the planet. So what we do is, on that front, we use a lot of our own AI to build what we call a overall fraud network score. And that fraud network score is a triangulation of about 1 trillion different signals from across over 1 billion devices. And we share that score with our financial customers like Capital One, like MasterCard, and that helps them triangulate fraud. So that's one dimension of financial crime. The second thing we do is we look at how do we ensure there's compliance, which is another angle. And in compliance, we use generative AI on 3 levels. First is the explainability. When you try to explain to the average person what is GDPR, what is DORA, what is SOC, what is all the other kind of compliance around the world, it's very hard to explain that in plain English. Coen and I were just having a side discussion right now, and he's like, Ali, how do you talk to the executives about the complexity of AI, and how do you bring it down to common language? And generative AI allows you to translate these very complex legal compliance frameworks and laws into very consumable things, because one of the biggest aspects of financial crime is social engineering. So the more education, the better. The third is how we build products that address these things. So for example, our Dynamics fraud copilot. Copilot is basically an AI assistant. Allows you to be able to trace, to build rules for fraud modeling and threat modeling that increase your productivity as an organization by over 50% to be able to build these threat models and these fraud models, and it does it in a very natural language, interactive way. And then the other area is we extend a lot of this through our partners, right? So for example, with a company like Symphony AI, a global ISV that operates in multiple industries, but also within the financial industry, we launched with them Sensa Copilot. And Sensa Copilot is a Copilot AI assistant that allows financial crimes investigators to use natural language on SARS, suspicious activity reports. And that has increased their ability to process these criminal activities by over 60% and has increased the productivity of the investigator about 70%. And then lastly, we use very sophisticated AI techniques, for example, in biometrics. Like a lot of the technologies available today allow the creation of synthetic voices. So we have a lot of banks that call us with fraud detection around companies or individuals or crime syndicates that mimic a human voice through synthetic voices. And then they try to impersonate someone like me. I've been a victim of identity theft myself. So we use behind the scenes very deep biometric AI technologies, and that allows us to really distinguish between synthetic deepfake voices and human voices. And for example, with HSBC, we've been able to save them over $400 million of identity fraud just by detecting synthetic voices. So there are a lot of different areas, a lot of different ideas, and services that we provide. And lastly, we work very closely with the regulators across the world. We ensure that our products, our services are always compliant and meeting the kind of the highest bar. So this is just a glimpse of how broad the spectrum is. But narrowing it down to like the financial crime area, we also work with SWIFT on anti-money laundering, to help in a very compliant way, where we use Azure Confidential Compute and AI machine learning models to detect fraud patterns of movement of money across banks without seeing the data of the customer or the bank. So we are compliant. SWIFT is the aggregator. Using Azure Confidential Cloud, it can detect patterns of payment fraud across the banks, and that helps the broader financial system remain vibrant. So I hope this gives you an idea, Stephen, of how broad the spectrum is.
Well, thanks, Ali. I mean, you've mentioned a lot of examples in many different areas, but it also sounds like there would be a lot of challenges in getting this implemented. There are so many opportunities out there, but at the same time, what are some of the key areas where it's harder to implement? What are the key obstacles when you work with these organizations?
A great question. I mean, I'll take a shot at it, and maybe the other panelists can also chime in. But I think there are three aspects or three key challenges, Stephen. One is the infrastructure itself, legacy infrastructure, legacy data platforms, legacy technologies don't lend themselves well to modern AI, technology stacks, and they don't lend themselves well to modern security implementations. Surprisingly, I was on my way here from the U.S. I watched a documentary called "The $1 Billion Heist" about the financial attack on the Bangladesh bank, and it was the first time I see the documentary. But everything they were referencing, how the network was penetrated, how legacy processes, social human engineering, how they got into the bank. It was just such a lightning rod, in the sense of, the basics need to be there. So that's, I'd say, the first, aspect, and it needs to start at the CEO leadership level. It has to be leader-led, push. The second is you need to work within the broader regulatory ecosystem. You can't operate outside of the regulatory ecosystem, and the more you are able to contribute to that two-way dialogue, the more you're able to bring the broader industry and the broader ecosystem, because you're going to need the broader ecosystem. You're going to need a framework, a regulatory framework that allows you to be able to have that constructive dialogue in a way that is balancing the regulatory need and the technological innovation that is outpacing the regulatory framework.
So it really sounds like there are many challenges, and sorry, Ali, I'm going to just cut you off there. I mean, but Coen, your organization, you're a digital bank, and in fact, you would not exist had it not been for technology because of the way you operate, right? So what about you guys? I mean, what key role does AI play in your organization?
Yeah, Stephen, I would not have guessed a year back how much we're doing, particularly with generative AI. In our world, and my friend Roger Grobler sort of shared an idea with me yesterday. He said, when it comes to these things, we don't know where we're going, but we know how to get there. And this is something he learned from working with trackers in the African bush. And so I think what we're learning is that there is no clear signal on the hill with AI that we can follow where we know where we're going to be in 5 years. I think generally, the more I listen to people, the more I myself try to figure this out, my sense is we actually really, really don't know where this is going to end. But at the same time, it is very clear what the immediate opportunities are. And in our business, we already have a dozen use cases implemented in the business using generative AI and together sometimes with a traditional AI.
Give us an example.
I think a good example is customer adoption. So we run a digital bank. We currently onboard about 1 million customers every 8 to 10 weeks onto the platform. And that's a great sort of vanity statistic to share. But those 10 million customers are worth nothing to us if they don't use our platform. And so what we've done, and an area that we've invested very heavily in AI in the 5 years we've been in business, is using AI to predict the next thing that the customer is most likely to want to do with us, the next use case. To predict not only the next best action for the customer, but also what channel to communicate to the customer to talk to them about it. But we had this bottleneck, and the bottleneck was generating text fast enough, messages fast enough to act on the insights we had as to what the customer would want to do next. And so what we've now done is we've added a ChatGPT layer on top of the traditional AI, and what that does is it's generating text and actively A/B testing the text. And what that allows us to do is we are now sending 7 times as many messages out to our customers as we used to, and our net operating income for those customers is actually increasing against the holdout group by 30 to 50%. So really spectacular results in that field.
You know, you probably could get text out faster, but you just got to be a bit more, your AI has to be more woke. They've got to type like LOL and, DM and use the short forms, and that can get in touch with people faster. Akio, at SMBC, that's a bank that's been around for many years, and you are using AI. You're telling me that it's a bit like a buddy to your CFO. Yeah. How does that work?
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen, for having me. And it's a great pleasure to join the FinTech Festival and this session. Also, a nice coincidence to be together with Ali-san, since Microsoft and SMBC are having a strategic partnership and working on specific use cases in generative AI. SMBC has been exploring use cases of AI. Early this year, we formed an AI project team and identified more than 500 use cases, both internal and external. Obviously, many of them to make internal processes more efficient. I'm strongly encouraging my team to focus more on customer value-added use cases. For the last couple years, we are working closely with our customers to provide digital financial solutions, leveraging our advanced technologies. The vision of SMBC's digital transformation is to support our customers in their transformation journey. Almost all corporates are going through their own transformation using digital technology. One area which is very relevant to banks is supply chain digitization of industry value chains. Supply chain finance, cross-border remittance, FX, lending for small business, and sustainability across supply chain are deeply interconnected with banking and corporate supply chain operations. When we discuss with corporate CFOs, one of their biggest challenges or pain points is to use data to get meaningful insights for decision making. Various data sources, different formats across different businesses. Difficulties in organizing the data are their pain points. Many CFOs told us their team spend more time copying and pasting Excel files. To tackle this issue, we are providing dashboard templates to help CFOs to analyze and visualize data to make informed decisions. When generative AI was announced, my team started working on a prototype to make data analytics conversational experience for CFOs. When CFOs ask questions in simple English, AI tool to give analytics results in graphs and recommendations specifically for that CFO. Not just daily, but customized for that CFO. It's an experimental stage at that moment, but my vision is to provide a trusted discussion partner to our customers, combining their data and our know-how. By the way, you can experience the demo at the SMBC booth in this hall. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Akio-san. So it sounds like, in fact, I can see a lot of upside for a bank like SMBC. Not only can you speak to it in your language, in Japanese, it would actually be able to translate it and help you, spread the message to others in your organization anywhere across the world. I'm going to take some questions from Slido because there are a few that have been asking about financial crime and also regulation. So maybe Ali, you can take this. In terms of, it's pretty much free for all right now. AI hasn't done too much bad yet, which is why governments haven't really clamped down on it. But is this a slippery slope? I mean, and how do we sort of navigate that while allowing it to flourish, but at the same time, making sure it doesn't cause too much damage? Because as you mentioned, deepfakes and all that, lots of scams going on at the same time. How do we sort of juggle the two?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, Stephen, and I think we need to be very grounded. AI, generative AI in particular, is truly a remarkable technology in many, many, many ways. It's a groundbreaking technology that's going to scale human cognitive, intellectual abilities to unprecedented heights, way more than the mechanization of labor in the Industrial Revolution. That said, to your point, there are clear risks. So Microsoft's approach is really multifaceted. The first is to make sure that we build secure, compliant technology, and we do it across multiple dimensions. The first is around how we work at the policy level. And within Microsoft, we have something we call the Office of Responsible AI. This is a group of very intelligent lawyers, philosophers, liberal arts major, and people who really guide the engineering development in an ethical way, the implementation of ethical AI, their interpretation of the law, the compliance with the law, and they are part of our legal organization. The second part of governance is around what we call Ether, applied AI in ethics and research, and that's a cross-company multidisciplinary committee that meets every month and reviews what we call sensitive use cases. We have banks who've come to us and wanted to use voice biometrics in a very dragnet manner, meaning the minute you call the bank, it collects all of the data and then recognizes you. And we've advised the banks not to do that because you could be capturing the voice of a child, and that's a violation of the Child Online Protection Act in the US. That's a felony. So there's, we give a lot of advice to our customers. That's it. Then the third part is something we call RAISE, Responsible AI in Systems Engineering, and that's what we do in the product team, down to the product, to the service itself. From the grounds up, we build the products in a secure, ethical, AI compliant manner. And then the fourth is we publish a lot of these tools both in open source on GitHub. We create within our tools the Responsible AI dashboard that allows customers to see transparently how these models work. We provide evaluation criteria, scoring of the models, explainability of the models. And then all of that is guided by a set of principles we call the responsible AI standard. And for us, responsible AI means the models need to be fair. They need to be transparent. They need to be inclusive. They need to be accountable, and they need to be secure. And if you look at these 5 dimensions of our principles, they mimic and mirror a lot of the regulatory principles and the governance principles are out there. So that is kind of how we try to make sure that we are always balanced. Right. Equally,
you could have all those things and still crime will occur, right? I mean, the bad guys always tend to be one step ahead. I mean, and for instance, with AI, it will try and predict, as Coen mentioned, what you want to do. But honestly, when I'm taking out $80,000 from a bank, physically, a bank teller is the one who's going to go, really? You know, is something wrong? Are you being scammed? Can the AI do that? Read the body language, understand the tone, because now you've got everything about me, so you think it's me, but it's not me. It's not really me.
It's a great point. So yes, so how do we tackle that? So we tackle that on multiple fronts. The first is, as I was explaining earlier, you need to have the right modern foundational cloud infrastructure, like Coen and I were just having a side conversation. And if you have that modern infrastructure, it allows you to establish signal behind the scenes. It allows you to understand the anomalies of such behavior. It allows you to be able to understand the patterns, okay? Why would somebody, for example, not picking on you, Stephen, but why would somebody who's never withdrawn $80,000 suddenly want to withdraw $80,000 today? Why would somebody who's never had $80,000 in their bank suddenly have $80,000 deposited? I mean, they may sound simple, but when you're triangulating, at the scale of the global financial system, take Microsoft. We support over 10,000 different payment cards. We take over 50 different currencies around the world. We operate in over 180 countries around the world. We support gift cards, payments, cloud, enterprise, every kind of imaginable service you can imagine. And we have to triage those same signals because they're trying to also scam Microsoft of gift cards, subscriptions, online advertising. So we work behind the scenes to establish that. That's the first line of defense. The second, line of defense is the regulatory and the compliance and ensuring that the regulators themselves and the customers and the banks are educated. That was my point around education. The third is AI actually does help to the point on the social engineering. There are a lot of partners we work with that allow you to understand even sentiment analysis in a suspicious activity report. If you're nervous in the call, we can detect that. Why are you nervous trying to withdraw from your own account?
The question is, are we there yet? Are we there yet now?
We are there now.
We are there now?
We have these tools available today.
Well, Coen, what about you? I mean, is your audience, I imagine, would also be somewhat younger. I mean, does this apply to the Gen Z audience? I mean, do they relate the same way?
Yeah, I think all of us, irrespective of age, are very much exposed to this challenge of fraud, of criminal activity. And I would say, it's a moving target. Every time you think you've plugged a hole and they're not going to do this again, there's a new line of activity, a new a syndicate doing something different.
Right.
And we operate in pretty rough neighborhoods, and we see this all the time.
So how do you deal with it?
So the way we think about it is this is very much a team effort. And by a team effort, I mean, and I'm speaking to the bankers and the digital bankers and the fintechs in the audience, if I say team effort, it's not something you as a single institution or organization can actually manage.
Yep.
And I'll give the cloud providers a plug here. I'm squarely of the view, and I say this to regulators, that running your business in the cloud is way, way safer than running it on-prem infrastructure.
Thank you.
And the reason is you've got very many smart people helping you deal with these issues and helping you catch these new trends as they begin. So I'm afraid this is going to be part of our lives. The bad guys are going to use AI as hard as we do, and we just have to all work together to stay ahead of that curve and use every single tool we have at our disposal to keep ahead.
How do you deal with the accuracy issues, hallucinations that AI sometimes has? Yeah, Ali?
Go ahead.
Akio, would you like to take that?
Go ahead.
Yeah?
Go ahead.
How the AI starts dreaming, has its own ideas, sometimes it's wrong.
That's a great question. Our way of thinking so far is to make everything standardized as much as possible. And so we can make the process unified and effective. But the reality is corporates are facing so many challenges to standardize operation and process. Key reasons are the complexities of legacy systems. Every business unit is using a different system and different regulation in each country. Even though the common understanding was standardization is good, it's scalable. Customization is bad.
Right. But standardization doesn't make sense. Gen AI is not supposed to be standard. It's supposed to be customized, personal. It's mine.
But let me build on what Isowa-san said. I think there's two aspects to it, if I may. I think the first is how you implement, generative AI is very, very important. And when you look at, first let's define what hallucination is, just for the audience to be on the same page, because I think some people understand it, some people don't, and I apologize. But hallucination, generative AI, if you've used ChatGPT, is where after a certain number of turns in the conversation, the output of the conversation is completely different than what the original intent of the conversation was. So a human being, if Coen and I are having a conversation on the side, or Isowa-san, and we're talking about, Tokyo, or we're talking about Africa, we can immediately get back to the median and get back balanced on what is the topic and get on stage and discuss that. In generative AI, because it's a probabilistic AI model versus a deterministic AI model, after a certain point in time, it may steer in a very different direction. That is what we term as hallucination in the industry. So the way we deal with it is on multiple fronts. The first is at the service level, at the Azure OpenAI service level itself, what we call the application programming interface, the API. We build a lot of the ethical AI components in the service, Stephen, in the service. That's what I was referring to earlier as responsible AI and systems engineering. So for example, we do content filtering built into the system. So if you type in, discriminatory language, nefarious, malicious language, you type in a gaming chat things that are damaging to society and children, we automatically filter that harmful content at the service level. That's the first line of defense. The second line of defense, and not just harm, but harm, self-harm, PII, personally identifiable information, all that stuff is filtered at the service level itself. We also do a lot of what we call alignment, and alignment is another technical term in the industry where, it's a definition of when does the AI model gets misaligned with the human intelligence. So there's a lot of engineering we do behind the scenes to keep the model aligned to the normal conversation of a human, and that is not user configurable, but it's really at the service level. And we do a lot of third-party benchmarking, in the research, in the science. That's all built into the service as part of the value from Microsoft. The third is we use a lot of security, what we call red teaming. Red teams who try to break into the system and figure it out. And then the final part is what we call the system message. And if you've used chat or used OpenAI, GPT-4, the system message is where you treat the prompt or the text box as a robot. So you actually tell the prompt, thou shalt do the following, but not the following. And it will lock down that prompt 100%. So if you lock it down to that level, we have been able, and we work with all of the capital markets around the world and investment banks and retail banks, we have been able to lock it down almost 100% where there is no hallucination. Now, there is a trade-off in the sense that you're not going to get a broader answer than what the intended outcome is, but you do get to a point where you've locked down hallucination. I'm not going to tell you it's 100%, but it's 99% plus. Now, we are still doing a lot of research. We just launched GPT-4 Turbo, which is a new version of GPT with a 128,000K prompt of tokens. And we've added a lot more to the alignment, a lot more to security, a lot more to stability.
So are you saying there will always be some form of hallucinations? Okay, maybe not hallucination, a bad dream.
It is. By the way, I would say it slightly differently. And I know Coen wants to interject, but I'd say there will always be an unknown amount of output because the nature of the model is probabilistic. If you lose the probabilistic model, you actually lose the entire value of generative AI. It's a very important point, okay? What is it do you want? If you want deterministic AI, just use classical ML and you're done. Go back and
So kind of like know the risks involved. Coen.
Let me close on that and then I'll give it to Coen. So the question is, what is your tolerance in what use case and how do you lock it down to a level where the risk is the cost of doing business? That is how I would phrase it. Coen, over to you.
Stephen, maybe just to emphasize one thing that we're learning the hard way in our business is that, and you made the point before, Ali, education is extremely important.
Absolutely.
We need to go to the trouble of learning, if you're using an AI tool, you need to understand what the tool is, what the tool does, what the limitations of the tool is.
Precisely.
Akio-san had a great example of a tool that works for the CFO. But that CFO needs to understand what is the data that's coming into this tool, how does this tool work, what are the limitations of the tool. And so what we see in our business is that we have to spend time and energy, at least not at a deep technical level, but at least at a conceptual and architectural level, helping our people understand what they are working with. It's not magic. It's not like a panacea and a solution to all our problems. You don't go to ChatGPT and ask it the meaning of life, and that's the end of the conversation. So understanding it and teaching ourselves to understand both the uses and the limitations will help us not only deal with potential hallucinations, but also all the other problems that we have not yet foreseen.
If I may add, so well said, because we also require, actually, not just recommend, we require, especially in regulated industries, especially in high-risk industries like healthcare, like finance, that there is always a safety brake and there's a human. So we are not at all recommending or favoring a 100% autonomous or automated approach. On the contrary, we are saying generative AI is an augmentation to your productivity and a catalyzer to your creativity. But it doesn't replace the human. It should not replace the human. It's yet another tool. But it's an intelligent tool that is unprecedented in human history, because it's for the first time ever, we have a tool that can actually reason. And what is generative AI? It's a reasoning engine. When you apply that reasoning engine on top of the data, you have an ability to see patterns at a scale that is, again, unprecedented. It doesn't mean you eliminate human reasoning. It means now you've given the human reasoning ability yet another tool, the same way mechanization gave the human physical force a lever in physics. I hope that.
But in a way, this the AI, you are empowering it in a way that maybe might be more so than you would empower one of your own staff in that sense. So let me ask you, and this is also a question.
But not without limitations, Stephen. You would empower it.
There will be limitations.
Yeah, yes, exactly. So you would empower it, but you would still have the safety brakes in place.
Always, or will there be a point in time where it will evolve to a stage where
it depends on the use case and the risk. If it's generating nice images for a little child to play with, as long as they're safe, or right. I don't want to say little child, sorry, but if they're generating images that are just funny and they're within certain controls and they don't deviate, then there might be a certain level of autonomy. But if you're doing transactional, regulated industry type work, healthcare, like for example, in our nuance business, our healthcare business, we fine-tune GPT-4 to lock it down, because that's life and limb scenarios in healthcare. Okay. So that is zero risk. That's even more zero risk than financial industry.
Would you say there is free play, but within certain boundaries?
Yes.
To a certain extent,
yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes. There's always a box.
What about, okay, we just got about 5 minutes left, and there's a question coming in about, what are some of the skills you want to see in your employees? Because now the workspace has changed, the tools have changed. So what roles do you see being more evident in the financial sector, and how should employees what kind of employees would you be looking for in this new generation, this new workspace? Perhaps Isowa-san at SMBC?
Makes the processes within banks efficient and having better interfaces for users, known examples. But I want to shed the light to two different aspects, which financial inclusion and sustainability. Using generative AI to have simple conversations in any language is critical to improve the adoption to digital economy in emerging countries. Using conversational interfaces to bring a massive workforce to formal economy is critical for growth and prosperity. Also, in ESG, the challenge is to act to different regulations. Here also, I hope generative AI can be a conversational interface to provide specific information to take relevant actions on ESG. SMBC is committed to Asia and create social values together with economic values. I'd like to leverage all technologies we can have to pursue this commitment. Thank you.
Ali, what kind of guys would you be looking for today to join Microsoft, join your team?
I think you got to distinguish first on what is the task you're trying to solve for. Why? Because I'll give you like a very personal example. I have 2 teenage boys, and one is a geek who wants to go and study computer science, and he's like, Dad, do I need to study computer science anymore? Because now, what is the most common programming language? It's actually English. If you can speak in English, you can program these modern computers. So I say, yes, there is always going to be a need for computer scientists, computer engineers, data scientists, and so on. It's how you apply it within the modern generative AI landscape. The roles are going to evolve dramatically. A traditional data scientist, we went through this journey inside Microsoft. Classical data scientists, classical machine learning experts, we had resistance. We had inertia in the system because it's like, there was a little bit of skepticism, there was a little bit of disbelief, but then now suddenly realizing, well, I gotta change, I gotta think differently, I gotta apply a growth mindset to be able. So I would say fundamentally, it's people who are willing to change is the first criteria. People who can apply a growth mindset and are agile. Why? If you want to compete with AI as a human being, what is one of the number 1 success criteria of a human being, and I think Coen may relate to it as an entrepreneur, it is your ability to bounce back from adversity. It's resilience, it's grit. Well, when you're competing with AI, they don't have emotional barriers to resilience. They can keep learning and iterating and learning and iterating and learning and iterating until they outmaneuver you. But if you're more agile, you are faster than the model, because that is where you as a human can excel. And you can, and you can apply, human abilities way beyond that. So that is one criteria. The second criteria, honestly, is people who are constant learners. If I apply, what I learned in college in computer science, I would be unemployed today. Absolutely unemployed, because modern AI is not what I learned back in college, what used to be called expert systems. The third, and most importantly, is communication skills, teamwork. In this modern world, if you cannot work with other humans, forget all AI, you can't function in a big organization like Microsoft. So these are the key skills, I would say, fundamental, foundational skills. The rest you can teach the employee.
Coen.
It's interesting when me and Dietmar, our chief data scientist, have this conversation, we can see our internal ChatGPT version. Yeah. We can see how people use it. And there's this idea that AI is the big equalizer. What we worry about is that's not what we're seeing. We're actually seeing our people in our business bifurcate into people who sort of treat it as a novelty, help me write a poem about my dog, and then they stop using it. And people who stay curious, who keep leaning in, keep putting energy into it, and grow with this. Our Dietmar has a saying, ChatGPT will not take your job, but the person who is excited about it and using it, that person will take your job.
Yes.
And so I do think for us, energy, creativity, hunger to learn, these are the things that really will distinguish us in the future. Because even sitting here, we cannot guess what this thing looks like.
Absolutely.
I would say even 12 or 18 months from now.
Absolutely.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. I mean, you've reinforced my idea, because I keep telling my kids, I don't know what the jobs of the future are. What you study now may not be relevant in the future, but if you're nice to people, people like working with you, they enjoy, your kind of leadership, then that is the upside for you. And I think that's something we all have to look forward to, because we don't know what AI is going to do. So, on that note, I will say thank you to my panel here. Please join me thanking them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Isowa-san, Ali, Coen, and yeah, let me know. Do you think any of that was generated by AI? Nah, they can't. But ladies and gentlemen, I hope we've shed some insight on this topic for you. And of course, I'm sorry we couldn't get to all the questions.